Got a mic on.
I should be on.
Okay. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the special town council meeting of August 16th. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7:03 p.m. If you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. If we could do the roll call, please.
Counselor Braverman. Deputy Mayor Budraco.
Here.
Counselor Camillo. Counselor Donahue.
Here.
Counselor Mankey.
Here.
Counselor Nagel. Counselor Page.
Here.
Counselor Rada.
Here.
Mayor Del Buono.
Here. Welcome back, Susan.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on now to approval of the agenda.
Which is a holdover, so you can move right past it because it's a special meeting.
Oh, thank you. That shouldn't be there anyway. All right. Next item this evening is proclamations and awards, and we do have one proclamation this evening. It is for Lawrence DeSimone, a police officer in town who has retired. And I would like to read that into the record. I don't believe he's on the meeting, so he will be presented with this at a later date. Okay. Proclamation. Whereas Lawrence DeSimone was hired as a police officer for the town of Newington on July 18th, 2002. And whereas Officer Lawrence DeSimone was appointed to the emergency response team June 2004 to November 2011 and December 2014 through July 2022. And whereas in June 2004, Lawrence DeSimone was appointed to field training officer. And whereas on April 27th, 2008, Lawrence DeSimone was promoted to detective. And whereas Detective Lawrence DeSimone received a good performance recognition in February 2005. And whereas Detective Lawrence DeSimone received a Distinguished Service Award in February 2006 and an Excellence in Policing Award in December of 2007. And whereas in July 2009, Detective Lawrence DeSimone received the Arrest Investigation of the Month from the Detective Division. And whereas Detective Lawrence DeSimone received the Distinguished Service Award for the January 19th, 2014 incident and received the Outstanding Investigative Work Commendation for the February 27th, 2015 incident. And whereas on May 21st, 2019, Detective Lawrence DeSimone received an Excellence in Policing citation. And whereas Detective Lawrence DeSimone received commendation letters from surrounding police departments, including Wethersfield, New Britain, and Central Connecticut State University Police Departments, the state's attorney's office, and various companies. And whereas Detective Lawrence DeSimone received various letters and thank you notes of appreciation from residents and citizens. And whereas after 20 plus years of service, Detective Lawrence DeSimone retired from the Newington Police Department on July 31st, 2022. Now therefore be it resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby recognizes and extends its sincere appreciation to Detective Lawrence DeSimone for his professional service and dedication to the town and wishes him the best in his retirement. Dated in Newington, Connecticut, this 16th day of August, 2022, signed Beth Del Buono, Mayor, on behalf of the Town Council. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilor Mankey, and we'll open it for discussion. Deputy Mayor Budraco.
Yes, I just wanted on the record that it's been noted that through 20 years of service, Detective DeSimone rose through the ranks of the department and assumed a multitude of responsibilities that were very important to the success of the Newington Police Department. And it's obvious he's received numerous awards, accolades, recognitions from the department, from residents, and as well as colleagues in neighboring communities. So I'd like to thank him for 20 years of dedicated service to the Newington Police Department and to our community, keeping us safe. and dedicating his time and efforts to the town. I wish him well in his retirement, and it's well deserved.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Counselor Page.
Thank you, Mayor. I would also just like to say to Detective DeSimone, thank you very much for putting your life and your limb out there every day, taking risks, keeping us safe, and taking time away from your family and friends, and who knows how many holidays or evenings, rushing towards dangerous situations when many of us are going the other way. So thank you very much for your years of service, and we wish you nothing but the best and a long, healthy, happy retirement.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Menke.
I would just add to that, I would just thank Detective DeSimone for his service to the community, and wish him all the best in his retirement.
Thank you. I too would like to offer my congratulations and sincere thanks to Detective DeSimone. Any dealings I've had with him over the years have been just super professional. And you know, Larry just needs to know he's just a nice guy. I've appreciated working with him over the years. And I appreciate all of the work he's done for our town and for our residents. And I certainly wish you, Larry, all of the best in your retirement and whatever the future holds for you. I'm sure you're not done yet. So congratulations, and we look forward to running into you in the future. All right, we have a motion. We have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, this evening, we have a presentation from the Greater Hartford Mobility Study, or regarding the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. We all received a memo explaining a little bit about the history of how this came to be. And I know we have a few individuals with us this evening. Mr. Chapman, did you want to start, or do you want me to go straight to our guests?
No, I would say go right to our guests. They have the most information about this, and it sounds like a very exciting program that I'm interested in myself. So go ahead.
Okay, yeah, Deputy Mayor Bedrejko brought this to our attention at our last meeting after hearing about it at TVZ. So we're really eager to hear more about it. And I believe we have 4 individuals. If there's somebody I'm missing, I see Kevin Rivera. Maybe it's just 3. Nilesh Patel and Michael Morehouse. Welcome.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Who'd like to take the lead?
I can start off. Good evening. My name is Nilesh Patel. I'm with the Department of Transportation. I'm a principal engineer in the department's major highways unit. And our unit is overseeing the team that's working on the Greater Hartford Mobility Study. With us tonight, we have Mike Morehouse from FHI Studios and also Kevin Rivera from FHI Studios. We have a pretty comprehensive team that includes Trans Systems, FHI, AECom, and also WSP. So they've done a lot of great work, and thank you for the opportunity to allow us to present the mobility study to you, and hopefully it's very informative. I think it was for the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Sure.
You were hearing. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Mike to go ahead and give the presentation.
Great, thanks, Neil. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. I assume that's okay. Let me know if this doesn't show up on your screen, but I should be sharing now.
Yep, it's there. Yep.
Okay, terrific. All right, well, thanks again for having us. Yeah, I'm filling in for Casey Harden. I don't know if any of you know Casey, but he's been coordinating with the town on this and met with P&Z a few weeks ago. So this is a great follow-up to that meeting. We got some really great feedback from the town. I know you have a memo. It looks like that you got a somewhat of an understanding of the background. I'll just give a really quick overview. And then I want to talk a little bit about the comments from P&Z and some of the improvements that are important to the town of Newington. And then we can have a little bit of a discussion on that. So the background of this was, it's kind of long and complicated, but I mean, many of you probably were aware that for several years, the department was looking at I-84 through Hartford. It was roughly a 2-mile segment of elevated highway that a lot of detailed planning and engineering went into, looking at lowering the highway and relocating the rail line and fast track line and really trying to come up with a great solution for the city of Hartford and for the traveling public at large. But the reality is there was a lot of things that project just couldn't address. There's chronic congestion as a result of where the I-91 interchange is in Hartford. There's a lot going on with the rail line. We started to realize that other options could be precluded if we were to continue along a pathway of just looking at I-84, the 2-mile I-84 in isolation. There's a lot of interest in trails these days, and East Coast Greenway is looking for a route through the city. And then just a multitude of things that, we recognized we needed to step back and do a more comprehensive look at transportation as a system. Really, the way planning kind of unfortunately has gone on in a more conventional way is a lot of people and agencies and municipalities, they look at things in relative isolation. You sort of reactively address needs, and those don't always sync up with other needs. And what the department realized was that there really needed to be a much more holistic look at how transportation works together, how bike ped improvements enhance transit, how rail and highway work, synergistically. And really, if we think about things in this really comprehensive, multimodal and system-wide way, we can come up with the best investments for the future. So that's really where the Greater Hartford Mobility Study came into play. And, we really have a very broad vision and set of goals. I mean, this is really about that integrated and resilient transportation system that looks at virtually all modes of travel, not only within the urban core of the region, but within, all the suburban surrounding communities as well. This is really about, looking at transportation as a means to an end. Transportation is what provides us with a high quality of life, economic opportunities, and so on. So really, that was a really strong way to start. That's really the umbrella. Everything we looked at in this project so far has met that vision in some way. And then, while this is a transportation study at heart, really it is about movement of people and goods, and the DOT is responsible for that. It goes beyond that, and it's not just moving people. It's really looking at providing options, making sure that transportation is safe, reliable, accessible for all people. It's also looking at future needs and emerging technologies. We know that there's a lot of disrupting technologies in transportation these days, from information technology to semi-autonomous vehicles to, in the future, maybe flying in fully autonomous vehicles. But we need to understand that the times are always changing, and so is technology. And what we plan for today may not necessarily be what's needed tomorrow. And then, of course, social equity, environmental justice. That was something that was really important to consider. And we continue to work hard to make sure that everything we look at really takes a look at not only benefiting, but even reversing some of the destructive policies of the past that have led to impacts to people of color, people of low income, people with disabilities, and so on. And then, of course, very important is ensuring that we're minimizing environmental impacts. A very important issue these days. So we have virtually hundreds of ideas. The process so far over the last year and a half was to listen to stakeholders, talk to the public, and we've done that extensively, and hear what kind of needs they have, and then do a parallel technical process to really look at what are the transportation needs, where's the congestion hotspots, where are the limitations in the transit system, where are there gaps in the bike ped network, and so forth, and pull all that stuff together into what we call a universe of alternatives. And so we're in the process right now of trying to winnow down that universe of alternatives, which is massive. And obviously not everything meets a regional need. And there are many things that we heard that potentially aren't even feasible. So we're really trying to screen down to a more finite subset of ideas that, again, work together synergistically to form a great solution for the entire region from a system perspective. So, and I know many of you, have heard over the years of the interesting work that's been going on in Hartford with Congressman Larson and Hartford 400, the bold plan to look at tunnels and relocate highways and create waterfront boulevards and so on. So those ideas also have been folded into all of this. So there's a lot of really aspirational projects. And then there's a lot of really, I guess, ground up level projects that are small in scale, but when combined with lots of things, can really form the backbone of a really strong transportation system. Things like bus system improvements, just better bicycle pedestrian connectivity on streets. A lot of things that, again, will serve that greater vision of the bigger highway and transit investments, but also will start to help people in the more near term. So these were basically the several areas that sort of touch Newington in some way. Route 175, really looking at that section of arterial, which is heavily trafficked, but also has a real need for bicycle pedestrian safety. Looking at transit-oriented development around fast track as a tool for how to create future development opportunities. You mentioned also the increased transit availability in terms of frequency, time of day, span of service to major employment centers throughout the region. Since there's a very, very small mode share to transit from Newington, but there's a lot of opportunity to increase that ridership if we created transit that worked for everybody. Establishment of Greenway corridors and bike corridors, improving safety for all modes and reducing congestion. Looking at potentially a new station along the Hartford line, and this Newington east-west connection. I'm going to go through those in a little bit of detail, and I don't know all the facts and figures, but certainly happy to hear your thoughts on some of these things. But before I begin that, I just wanted to provide a few caveats. This is not a study that maybe you're used to being involved with. It's not the kind of study where there's a lot of really detailed drawings and very specific details on any one of these alternatives. This is about developing a program. So the Greater Hartford Mobility Study is following a process called a PEL. It's Planning Environmental Linkages. Basically what it does is it sets up projects that have a lot of support from stakeholders, from the public, from the technical analysis, and picks a pathway to advance them to future study or future planning, design, and development. So we haven't done detailed engineering. I just want to put that out there. This is really about identifying those projects that may make sense to move forward. However, there has been some schematic layout for some of these ideas, and that was done for the purposes of really identifying if there was any fatal flaw that we needed to know about, or because we needed to kind of come up with some very high level cost estimates, so we know ballpark how much the investment might be. A lot of our community engagement today was really focused on understanding what the needs are. We have not engaged people on real detailed, the technical details, because again, we haven't really gone through that process of engineering these things, and that kind of community engagement should come in future phases of any of these projects should they move forward. I will emphasize that mobility is still the core focus, but the supporting goals of equity, safety, environment, resiliency, technology, and public input were all part of the thinking about how these things rank from a benefit cost perspective. And then we're also thinking about these other criteria like economic opportunity, how flexible or complex the system is, and whether it's these improvements are compatible with one another. I also should point out that not everything in the universe of alternatives are things that the DOT would necessarily be responsible for. There may be ideas that come out of this that are the responsibility of the municipalities, or can maybe be coordinated by the regional MPO or by private entities. And so that hasn't really all been figured out yet. But just know that when you think at a system level, DOT doesn't have ownership or control over everything, but we have to include all ideas if we really want to think systemically. And again, the details will, for a lot of these things will be addressed in the efforts that follow the mobility study. So just to go through this list, again, Route 175, we know it's a cut through. It also serves residential and commercial properties along the way. It's oftentimes an overflow for 84 when it gets congested, but it carries about 30,000 vehicles a day, so it's heavily trafficked. And so there's congestion, and there's also the desire by many of the stakeholders we talk to try to make this a corridor that's safer, more accessible for other modes of transportation. So just again, The types of improvements that we're thinking of here include potential space for bicycles, making sure there's no gaps in the sidewalk system, turn lanes at some of the key intersections so left turning traffic can get out of the flow, maybe modernization of the interchange with Route 15. So these are some of the ideas that the project team has come up with. And overall, it ranks pretty high in terms of benefit. We think that travel time can be improved by eliminating some of those blockages and those left lane turns. And also by making the road safer and lowering crash rates, you minimize that non-recurrent delay that happens when there's a crash. We think that just access connectivity for people, non-motorized uses like bikes and pedestrians is a huge benefit. And overall, just making sure that the travel experience is much more convenient for all users. So the overall assessment is positive. My understanding is that, you know, the town has had many discussions on Route 175, and there's probably lots of different ideas of what to do about this in the details. And I would say if the town supports doing something with 175, this is something that could be advanced and then moved into a process that does start to flesh out really exactly what those details are, involve the public, and involve town staff and such. The second idea, or the support, was support for transit-oriented development. And as many of you may know, because you have transit going through your community, is that, you know, the type of development which tends to be mid to high density around station locations for premium transit, whether that be busway or rail, is a really strong, sound strategy for attracting developers, attracting development, attracting residents, and providing that kind of one-stop work, live environment that there are a lot of people are looking for these days, and also connecting those areas to other nodes along the transitway. So while TOD isn't something, again, that the DOT is directly responsible for, we are very supportive of investments that encourage TOD, because what that allows the transit system to do is increase frequency, increase the span of service, just make transit overall more effective in the ridership growth and all of that. So it's really a strong strategy, both from an economic development tool perspective, but also for making transit much more viable. Again, no surprise, the benefits with this type of strategy are very high. So again, you know, we really encourage investments that take advantage of TOD. Another thing the town is interested in is providing better access transit to employment locations throughout the region, but certainly to and from Newington and Rocky Hill and those areas. There's often pretty good service throughout the peak commuter hours of the day. CT Transit does pretty much serve all the major employment centers around the region, but things get a little bit dicey in the middle of the day or in the evening hours. And so we're looking at strategies to improve, again, the frequency in those times of day. So we can accommodate shift workers and others who have, middle of day and evening needs. But it goes beyond just simply adding more buses to the service, more frequency. It's really also looking at improving the multimodal connections, those last mile connections from the bus stops to those employment locations. We're looking at things like mobility hubs, which are areas where a lot of different modes can come together, where if you get off the bus, you can get a ride share or a taxi, or you can potentially rent a bike or other micro mobility device. Just other ways of making sure that you complete the journey from the bus to where you want to go. So this hopefully over time, again, makes transit work better for all types of different users. And this is another strategy that has moderate to high benefits across the board. And I'm just showing you basically the core mobility benefits, the travel time reliability, the access, and the end user convenience. We do have benefits for all of those other goals that I shared with you, but this is really the main thing. We wanted to ensure that the benefits are high from a mobility perspective before we dive down into a lot of those other things. I can make this available. I don't want to read to you, and I'm sure you don't want me to read to you. So this presentation can be certainly made available after this, and you can look at it in more detail when you have time. And then there's just a system of greenways. We looked a lot at different ways to accommodate bicycle and pedestrian travel off-road if possible, along either rail rights of way or alongside roadways. This is kind of a whole system of greenways that we've identified as that's serving kind of a regional mobility need. It's not just recreation, it's also providing transportation utility to key centers and nodes of activity. Down in the Newington area, we have a number of things that are a number of like what we call side paths, potential bike and pedestrian facilities that would be off to the side of the road, just given the high volume of some of the roads. But some of these could be along Route 5 and 15. We see, we continue to see people ride their bikes, walk. We see people on wheelchairs in the shoulders of the Berlin Turnpike, and that's obviously not what we want. And if the right of way seems to be adequate, it may be possible to put a segment of pathway alongside to make that movement much safer and much more useful. Similarly, we already talked about Route 175, but there's possibility of a side path along Route 175 as well as along Willard Avenue. So curious when we get to the Q&A, your thoughts on support for those types of investments. And bike and pedestrian greenway investments typically have very high benefits. We find this nationwide. These things are relatively cost effective and get a high amount of use and do have an economic benefit as well. So, we think in a lot of ways, these are early wins if we can get some of these developed. And the state's already done a great job of really trying to connect a whole network of central Connecticut greenways. And so this would potentially add to that. Complete streets is something many communities are starting to prioritize. That's just making sure that all streets are safe, accessible, convenient for people of all ages and abilities. The Capital Region Council of Governments had developed a regional complete streets plan a few years ago. This is just a snapshot of that, but many municipalities have their own more detailed complete streets policies and plans as well. And again, not necessarily something the DOT can enforce or have any control over, but there's strong encouragement within this study to make sure that all towns pursue complete streets legislation if possible, or at least have plans that help them design and plan and prioritize complete streets within their communities. Not only we think it's the right and responsible thing to do from a safety perspective, but it's also where a lot of the funding is coming from. Federal Highway in particular is really advancing complete streets initiatives as the way to design non-access controlled roadways, and they're really aligning funding to those kinds of things. So having a complete streets policy obviously puts you in alignment with federal policy and state policy. Again, strong benefits for complete streets. Nothing, spoiler alert, nothing really in these group of investments are of negative benefit. These were all positive, strong elements of the overall universe of alternatives, which is good because we are finding that there are some things that simply aren't feasible. Having a station in Newington for the Hartford line. That's something that I know has been under probably discussion with the DOT, and not exactly sure where that station might be located, but there's probably a number of ideas that you all have, and I think that this is pre-pandemic was a very successful service, and it's been ramping up. I know the recent construction on the line has caused a little bit of dip, but we all expect it to come back and come back strong. So having a station in Newington is something that also contributes to the overall improvement to travel time, reliability, access, connectivity, that tool for TOD that you all noted. So these are all things that we also agree are positive benefits. And then finally, this is one that may or may not be feasible. I think that this east-west connector, which proposes a new local road that's built across the fast track line, is something that could alleviate some local traffic congestion and pressure. I know that the town has commented that this has been looked at in the past, and there are some environmental wetland issues that would need to be addressed, and so that could potentially be a snag in the development. But I think the technical team that looked at this, including our environmental planners, had agreed that there is benefit, and the impacts may not be as severe as we think they might be, and it's worth advancing to take a closer look at that. So I'm going to conclude. Those were obviously there's many more improvements that we're considering. Those are the ones that are near and dear to Newington. But this is, again, about a process. This is really 3 steps. I just want to share with you. The first step is really evaluating all of these different alternatives. We're at the process now where we're down, if you can see my cursor, we're down in this area where we're developing programs. We're screening the alternatives to get to a series of short-term, mid-term, and long-term programs. And then there's also going to be one program, that'll be fiscally constrained. We'll take a look at where we think we'll be able to get funding over the next couple decades, and then constrain the program according to funding. But really, we want to first look at unconstrained programs, really big picture aspirational programs. And for those 3 programs, we're going to run them through a scenario planning process. And the reason we're doing that is because the way that planning typically works is it looks at forecasting out into the future based on trends of the past. We're in a really uncertain time, and I think the pandemic has shed a lot of light that something like that causes dramatic behavioral changes in how people travel. We saw a real dip in transit use. We saw people not driving to work anymore and telecommuting. Frontline responders, obviously, we're now forced to be on the road at all times of the day. But it changed the way we travel. And if you looked in the paper recently, you saw that Hartford employment, they're cutting office space. And so is that going to extend out into the future? We don't know, but we think there's probably some really long lasting impact to all of this. We also know that land use could potentially change as a result, or transportation policy can affect change. There's a lot of things that we want to try to consider in the future, and this tool will allow us to test different land use forms, different transportation policies, different technologies that might proliferate into the vehicle stream, like autonomous vehicles or electric vehicles or alternative freight delivery methods. So this will allow us to test these programs to make sure that they work in the future under the widest range of future scenarios. And then we're going to make a recommendation for which programs, how they perform. There'll be some performance metrics. And then after that, the decision making is kind of out of our hands. There'll be some recommendations on how to advance early action items, how to initiate some preliminary engineering for some of these things that might be able to be built without going through a lengthy NEPA process. And then there's going to be really long-term things, which will go through extensive NEPA processes. We'll have to take many years to design and develop. But there's a lot of stakeholders involved. There's a lot of leaders involved throughout all the municipalities and all levels of state and federal government. And so this report, this study outcome will go through that process, and ultimately those decisions will be made by the DOT, by the governor, by Federal Highway Administration, and so on. So it's a very complex process, but we are in the last half year of this, and so we're going to start to see, I think, some real tangible ideas come forward. And your support matters. If the town is not on board with any of these, certainly they're not going to be made priorities by the department. So that's the end of what I had to present to you. I know Neil and Kevin and I are open to having a conversation and addressing any questions you might have.
Okay, great, thank you. Counselors, any thoughts, questions? I know, I'll start. I had one question. When you talked about, one of the things you mentioned was like the realignment of, I believe it was Maple Hill Avenue, and how that would decrease travel times and that kind of thing, but has there been consideration? I worry about increasing speed on that road if we take out some of the turns and some of the traffic measures that way.
It's a good comment, good question. Again, those kind of details have not been worked out, but that kind of comment is what we want to hear. That gets, so we're here, everything that we've collected, all the feedback we've collected on all of these ideas are getting passed through to the next phase of this. And if that's a project, that 175 project is something the town would like to see forward, again, those are the kind of comments that the next study team is going to start with. And that's when they're going to start meeting and more, developing the details, meeting with the town, making sure that there's no unintended consequences to a realignment of a road, for example.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Page?
Did you mean, Mayor, if I may ask, and then I want to make my comment, did you mean the potential realignment bringing then Maple Hill behind those 3 or 4 newer houses?
Yeah, honestly, the map was a little small. I was trying to figure out where it was gonna go and how it was gonna work, but just in general, when they talk about increasing travel time and kind of taking out left-hand turns and taking out some of those, in my mind, things that do slow down traffic, which 175 can be a raceway as it is. That can already be an issue. So Maple Hill Avenue and 175, all of it. So just concerns that I am thinking of if these things do move forward.
Because I was just thinking, and then I was just going to make a couple comments that if I understood correctly, and I know this has been discussed, I think for 20 years or more, 30 years, if they're talking about putting Maple Hill finally behind those 3 or 4 new homes and then aligning it with alumni and creating a stoplight there, that would create more of a crook in that, which would hopefully slow people down before they then zig and zag to get to Cedar Street. But again, we're not going to get into those details tonight. I'm sure it's just high view stuff. My questions and comments had to do, first of all, with, which may to some seem like craziness, but are we assuming in all of this work that you've done and in ongoing work that'll be done to study and make some changes around Greater Hartford, that Cedar Street needs to remain a 2-lane road going both ways? I know it went from 1 lane east-west back at the end of the 70s or early 80s. It was broadened out to 2 lanes both ways. I think our traffic at this point is similar to the Berlin Turnpike. Tens of thousands of cars. All of us, I think here, agree that it's just way too much. It's affected arguably our quality of life in town with pollution, with noise, with safety issues for pedestrians and bikers. And I would like part of this discussion to be, and maybe it already is, because I looked of the 358 pages, I just zeroed it on, or however many it was, on the few pages that had to do with Cedar Street. It looks like we're taking a look at how can we calm traffic? How can we create, as you've already mentioned, bikeways and pedestrian ways? And I would just like us to have a conversation about, can we, in the process of looking at alternative mobility venues and processes, can we someday aspire to have Cedar Street go back to 1 lane each way and increase other options like busways, like trains and so forth? So that's, I don't know if you want me to stop. Did you want to respond to that, sir? From, I'm sorry, I forget his name. Gentleman.
Well, no, I think we're going to take, the comment down and pass that on to our technical people looking at that. And I don't have a answer for you, but I
understand.
Right.
So,
I think
so
one thing to
go
note on 175, and I believe some folks have been talking with the department's project development unit. I think right now they're focused on the Route 9 northbound off ramp at 175 there, and looking at some improvements there. But there's been discussions over the years with the department on 175. But I think, as Mike pointed out, any of these improvements on 175 really do have to take into account all users, and really, and again, is it about calming the traffic? If to a certain degree, yeah, if we can, introducing those left turn lanes at certain key intersections, can improve safety if there are crash patterns there due to some of the backups. So it's really a combination of improvements, but and I think these discussions, as someone had mentioned, I think in the P&Z comments, are something that would be back and forth with the town and the state as we go through what can be done, within this corridor.
Right, and I guess just a couple more comments and then I'll defer to the others. We recently had, and our first responders had to take care of a tragedy. I think one or two people lost their lives with a terrible crash on East Cedar coming down. There was some sort of a head-on collision and it was tragic. And I know Avon Mountain years ago, which I know was a bigger hill, obviously, but had tragedy and then re-engineered a lot of that situation coming down the hill into Avon. And I would hate to think that we're waiting for people going 60, 70 miles an hour or faster down there for, God forbid, something hits a house or not worse, but or a pedestrian. So my concern is East Cedar. What can we do to slow that down and make that safer? And then the other end, in terms of Maple Hill to Fen Road, regardless of what we as a body decide in collaboration with the state about the train station, regardless of that, I think it's crazy that we aren't doing more actively and aggressively to work collaboratively with our state partners and maybe this is the start, to create bike lanes and pedestrian bridges so that folks from Newington can really easily and safely get over to, at least for now, the fast track. It's like it's two worlds. So I think to look at commerce, I guess that's it, from alumni to reduce traffic there and to create those calming options for traffic and increasing pedestrian bike is a wonderful idea. I've got a couple other comments, but it's basically Cedar Street, which I think most of us are predominantly concerned about that I'd like us to continue to aggressively talk about improving our quality of life, mobility, and so forth. So thank you, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Well, thank you, Councilor Page, because that was basically my comment. I think pretty universally over the years that at least I've been involved, I think all of us have heard that Cedar Street Route 175 is a disaster and it's just getting worse and worse. And quite frankly, before any of these other initiatives, including TOD, including rail, including bike paths, I don't think any of them can be implemented until there's a resolution to the traffic and the volume and the speed on Route 175. I think correcting Route 175 has to be done before we can successfully move forward on any of these other initiatives. That's my first comment. And second, I'm a little concerned, or I just want to make sure that any of these other proposals or initiatives or ideas that go through isn't just, I don't mean the word shell game, but isn't just moving cars from one location to another within the town of Newington. For example, the east-west connection, that's fine, but first of all, Newington doesn't have an awful lot of wetlands left. So if there's any significant disruption to the wetlands, that's got to be taken into account. I mean, at this point, given the changing climate, given the torrential rains we're getting, given the 100-year storms, there was some statement that was made there that, you're worrying about, transportation, equity, blah, blah, blah. And environmental was a little bit farther down the list. And I think environment at this point, particularly in Newington, because of our geography, has to be right up there. And taking traffic off of one road, if you're not reducing traffic, but if you're just going to take some cars off of one road and then dump it into another neighborhood in Newington, that to me is not acceptable. And that worries me a little bit about that Fen Road connection, because there are some neighborhoods there who may get a few cars, and I don't think there's going to be that many, but a few cars coming off Cedar Street, but then you're going to be dumping them into more residential neighborhoods. That's a concern. And third, when you talk about the final decision-making, the towns have to be involved. I mean, they really, really do. You were talking about, bringing this forward, advancing some of the projects, and then, the decision makers at the, state or the Fed or whatever level. But the town, any kind of alteration in our traffic patterns, our corridors, the roads, increasing traffic, increasing path, if there's going to be significant changes to I-84, some of the things that you didn't talk about, but diverting it through Newington, we need to know the impact before the decisions are made. So I certainly hope that these type of discussions, once there's kind of a winnowed list of feasible projects before they're deemed final go-aheads, that the town will be significantly involved. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. Yeah, and I think even that's what we want to hear from you tonight. And if there's significant reaction to any of these that you don't see as viable to move forward, we want to know that. But that also, we are going to have a lot of, we call them performance measures, but there's going to be a lot of quantitative and qualitative analysis done over the next few months that are going to show you how a lot of these things work together as a system, and you'll have an opportunity to review and weigh in on that. But even if a project gets sort of moved forward, this doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen. Every project requires significant additional study before anything happens, and that includes not only participation from the towns, but also from a wide array of stakeholders, the neighborhoods you mentioned, businesses, schools. There's a lot of things that could, in the end of the day, determine whether a project fails or advances. So, I hear you 100%. And yes, you absolutely need to be part of this process and have a say as to what's a supported project and what isn't. So thanks for your comment.
Just to add, we are also, working with the region in concert with the study, and we meet with them regularly, so they're aware of the needs of all the municipalities. We've started this municipal working group, so we are reaching out to all the municipalities to show them all the alternatives and some of the improvements that are part of the study at this point. So. No, we understand though in terms of decision making. It's our typical, right? We're not going to initiate a project without that initial coordination with the municipalities that we do, on a lot of our state projects.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Rada.
Yes, first I want to thank you very much. This is a very informative and detailed from the scope of Newington presentation, and I'm looking forward to receiving it and really looking through it in much greater depth. Couple of questions / comments. When you're talking about the complete streets and which really focuses on safety, we have 3 members of our fire department here with us tonight, and when I think of safety, I think of the need for fire, police, ambulances to be able to safely navigate our streets, Cedar Street or any other, and wondering when, again, you're talking about qualitative data and conversations that I think it would be really important to include these departments, police, fire, and EMS. And I'd be very interested in what feedback you all would have. Second is whether or not a presentation has been given or whether input has or will be elicited from Central Connecticut State University, which is right down the street or right over the hill from us on Cedar Street at Cedar and Fenn. And when the next step or the next phase in this process is going to begin. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. I believe, yeah, I believe CCSU was part of our original outreach to stakeholders. We met with dozens of stakeholders, including, the educational institutional uses, and I think CCSU was one of those. But the process of design when it comes to complete streets has to absolutely involve the first responders and all types of users responsible for planning, designing, maintaining, and enforcing these roads. So the department and we as practitioners are all very much in alignment when it comes to a lot of the roads have been designed for the purposes of moving vehicles fast and efficiently, and they end up being inherently unsafe. Over time, the development, cuts the curb, puts the driveways in, and then you have lots of conflicts. And that's what a lot of our 4-lane roads are in the state. Cedar Street, one of those. So it's very difficult to try to reverse decades of that kind of planning, but if that moves forward into a much more concerted design effort, then yeah, of course, the state would involve all of those stakeholders to the table and come up with solutions that would mitigate a lot of that problem.
Okay. You good, Councilor Rada?
Yeah, well, just my third question. I know I asked a lot of things, but the third one was you said that there's a next step in this process and when that will begin and what that will entail.
Right. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. So we're kind of there. We're in the process right now of screening the universe, and we are probably days, if not weeks, if not days away from having an initial draft of that screening, which will go to the department for review. And following that, we'll be packaging the highest performing solutions into these programs that I talked about. So not exactly, I don't have a perfect answer for you for when we'll be rolling that out publicly, but I know that we are really trying hard to wrap up this project by January. So I'm hopeful in the next month, 2 months, we'll have an initial draft of what those programs look like, which will be accompanied by by graphics, so you can see the entire system and how all these things link together in some way. So that's something we'll circle back with you all on and share with you when we have those details. We're in the internal review process right now of this screening and evaluation. So we want to wrap that up, again, within the next week or two.
Thank you.
Councilor Donahue?
Yeah, thanks guys for the presentation. As a resident on Cedar Street, the south side, because you can't do any improvements on the north side because you're in people's yards already. The south side is, if you're talking about sidewalks and a pedestrian bikeway, I'm going to be able to serve hot dogs from my garage, with the encroachment on the bottom, my second front yard or whatever it's classified as. So, although, because I've seen a plan where it says we need high priority sidewalks and all this other stuff, it's like, I cut the lawn out there. It's like taking your life in your hand when you go out there just to walk around. So I hope that the priority for anything you're doing on Cedar Street is the residents that live on Cedar Street. Okay. The bottom lot that I'm talking about used to be a building lot. Okay. Came in, they widened it, they, did this, and then they gave themselves another reason. Right. So I'm like already a 30-foot setback from the street. And my neighbors don't care because it's their front yard, but sidewalks, and they've already, when they redid the intersection of Vincent, they already put the crosswalks in. So I see it coming, and I just want to make sure that the residents on Cedar Street are the top priority. You're going to affect all those people's property values. So like I said, and I've been visiting this property for, I don't even want to talk about it, over 40 years. And I saw the construction when they widened. So that's my concern, is if anything that happens on Cedar Street, you need to get the residents of Cedar Street who are going to be affected of this, especially on the south side, to make sure they're informed. You know, it's just, I don't want to have it, you know, it's already a super highway.
Yep.
You know, and if we're gonna do it, let's do it. I mean, we've been talking about dead ending Maple Hill for
Years.
30 years.
Yep.
So let's just, if we're gonna do it, let's do it. If not, let's, you know, let's make a decision and be done with it. Right?
Yeah,
That's my only comment.
Yeah, thank you. That comment, you know, is being recorded. And again, you know, we're not going to advance any plan for Cedar Street. What we'll advance is if this is something that we want to see move forward, is a recommendation to do that detailed look and involve all the property owners and stakeholders in the process. So that's really where this project ends. Is it's not to lay out some sort of plan that an engineer did in the privacy of your home. You know, that's not the way we work anymore. And so while we did schematically lay it out, so we understood, hey, could it even be done? That's nothing that's ever going to be public, and anything, you know, thing that gets done will be in a very open, transparent process following the conclusion of our effort.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes, I just want to mention that, you know, we've, in the last year or so, had discussions with the state concerning Cedar Street sidewalks. And there was a push from the state to have a sidewalk installed from the new Dakota complex that's being built down to Fen Road. And if that's the type of remedy that your group is looking at, that will never fly. To put a sidewalk along Cedar Street at this time with no green belt, no shoulders, no protection. As the public safety director, I stopped that project. The second issue is that if you're going to do all these great improvements, the town should not be taking on the maintenance. And that's what was expected for the sidewalk to be built by the developer and then maintained by the town. Town has no property along there. So I want to make it clear that if it's on a state road, it's the state's. It's not going to become the town's. You know, we have expenses that we have to deal with, and the state has expenses they have to deal with. But to expect that the town was going to take over maintenance of a sidewalk that was dangerous in the first place, and you can only imagine if it's slippery because of snow and ice, and the mother's trying to push a stroller along there in the middle of the winter, something bad would happen. And that's why the sidewalk was stopped. But, you know, so it's a combination of logic for safety and cost of maintaining it has to be built into the state's program, not the town's program. That's all I have to say at this point.
The maintenance that's a question that occurs all over the state. And then unfortunately, there's not a good answer because as you mentioned, right, the state forces are limited in terms of maintenance, and most of the municipalities have the ordinances where if there's a property owner, they're responsible for that. But yeah, that's about, you know, that's something that has to be taken into account as anywhere we decide to propose sidewalks.
Yeah, and again, I just want to, you know, emphasize that the state was expecting us, town, to maintain a sidewalk that has Cedar Street on one side of it, and the state owns behind the sidewalk on the other side of the sidewalk, and somehow we were going to maintain it. Not going to happen.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Just one final comment. At the TPZ presentation, the slides showed, you know, very basically the 101 or whatever projects that were included in this study, as well as comments you received from the public, I guess, from residents and the public. There were some projects had 90 comments, you know, thumbs up, thumbs down, some had 50, some had 2, whatever, which I was surprised because I don't think that the ability for the public to comment was very well publicized. So I'm wondering if, I mean, it's nice for you to be talking to, I mean, I'm thrilled that you came to TPZ. I'm thrilled that you came here, but are you still collecting comments through your website from the general public? And if so, until when? And if so, can you put up the website so that if anybody who's watching this, any of the residents of our town, if they want to go onto your website and make comments as a general member of the public, they can do so?
Sure. I could have Kevin put the link to that in the chat here. But I mean, the first answer is, we're never done accepting comments, but we do have a process and we are moving ahead. All comments will be, like I say, advanced through this study and into any subsequent efforts that go on. So, again, there's public feedback, there's the stakeholders such as yourself, and then there's the technical needs. All those things constitute the input to the creation of all of these alternatives. Now, what we're again doing is packaging them in a strategic way so that they work together to the highest benefit. We will then be going out for a final round of comment solicitation. We will want people to respond to the program, to what do you think about all of this stuff? Again, that stuff will all be published and put in a report that will go to the DOT and all the other resource agencies that we report to. It'll be made publicly available online. And, all that stuff counts, right? That's the Pell process it's considered pre-NEPA. It's the planning that happens to identify the projects and ensure that people have a chance to participate. But this is by no means the end. This is very much the beginning. I think what you'll also see over the next few months is hopefully a set of early actions, we call them. These are, again, the smaller investments that we think can go a long way to start to prepare the region for some of the bigger things in the future. But these could be bus service enhancements, could be mobility hubs, could be some of these trail systems, could be some of these, making some of these arterial roads safer. These are things that don't necessarily need to go through the environmental process, but there's money through the IIJA that's coming, that's discretionary grant opportunities that the state's already trying to position themselves for. And, some of these projects could potentially be funded with some of this new federal money that came from the Jobs Act, Infrastructure Jobs Act. So, so anything that does move forward and has the general support of the stakeholders in the community, will again be subject to much more intensive outreach, project-specific outreach, where everybody will there'll be a much more concerted effort to really get the local community involved in any of the project development from there on in. But Kevin, were you able to put that in the chat for us?
It looks like the chat feature may be disabled, but for those who are tuning in, hartfordmobility.com is our website, and we do have a tab there. Yep, there. Thank you, James. And then we do have a banner over there that says provide feedback on alternatives, and those alternatives will populate on the screen. And you could even type in Newington into sort of this keyword search box, and it'll bring up all those alternatives that are central to Newington. So you can leave comments on there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Page?
Just a couple more comments.
Yeah.
Mayor. With all due respect to Councilor Petracco, I disagree that the Hartford Mobility Project should be a reason to delay the urgency around incentivizing the utilization and the increased utilization of mass transit, including train. We have over 30 trains that go through Newington every day. I think we should have a platform so we can actually get on the train here. I think it would be convenient. It would reduce our carbon footprint. It would address climate change issues and be just good for our Newington residents and those in the surrounding area. But we do agree on a lot of the Cedar Street issues, which we need to continue to address that we've talked about tonight. I would also agree with Mr. Chapman that I think if these gentlemen, which I don't think you are proposing this at all, but if you're proposing that we just pour cement for a 2-foot wide goat path that currently exists on Cedar from Maple Hill to Fenn, that would be outrageous and dangerous, and I wouldn't support it either. I would hope, though, that with all the great minds that are speaking tonight and all the work that's been done, that it would be a creative separate and alternate route that would be very safe for moms and carriages and everybody else. And that if as a body here representing the town, and the town agrees that we should have more pedestrian and bike friendly pathways, we should pay for that to help maintain those. I'd be happy to pay tax dollars to maintain more bikeways and pedestrian ways, along with the state dollars that come in to pay for that and to help maintain that. We work together as a team. This isn't the Truman Show. We're not in a little dome where we're separated from the rest of the state. We're actually connected to all the other towns. And I think we need to continue to step up and support this with our dollars and with our energy and with our brains. And I thank you for your presentation tonight.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you all very much
Thank
for
you very
the
much.
presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, folks, we'll move on now to public participation. Any member of the public may participate. If you're in the room, you're welcome to come up to the mic and just state your name and address for the record. We do have a 10-minute time limit, and on the screen, if
3
you're, wow.
10 minutes.
3 minute. 3-minute time limit. Wow. And there is a bar on the screen that I always forget to mention that helps gauge when the time is up. It will turn red as you speak. If you're in the room and like to come up, you're welcome to. And if you are online, I will just click over to that screen. And we have Rose Lyons.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I think I've listened to every different type of scenario for Cedar Street for the past 30 years now. I wonder why we just keep talking and talking and talking about it, and yet nothing gets done. Tonight, I'm even more confused than ever. I know that when the Dakota project went to court, I thought that there was some talk or some ruling from the court that they had to put in some sort of sidewalks, and then I remember the town manager saying, as he said tonight, as safety director, public safety director, he was not going to allow it. And yet I thought I heard in the beginning of the budget hearings and talking prior to the budget proceedings that it was said that there were some sidewalks going in on Cedar Street. I listened for years about how the Department of Transportation is not in the sidewalk business. Mr. Saunders made that quite clear when Connecticut Fast Track came through. If we can't even come to a conclusion as to sidewalks on Cedar Street, how in this green grass community, this God's green earth, how are we ever going to come up with a solution for the traffic on Cedar Street? I hope and I pray for the future generations in this town, because I'm 77 and I know I'm not going to see Cedar Street fixed in my lifetime. But I hope for the future generations that both the town of Newington and the state of Connecticut and the stakeholders and the residents come together and decide what can be done to alleviate the traffic and to make it safer for everyone. As far as open and transparent about this project, the first I heard of it was at the town planning and zoning, and I'm glad to see that it's at the town council meeting, but I'd like to know who in the town of Newington was involved in this process, how many residents were involved in it. It's totally unbelievable to me that 30 years later, after the first discussions about Cedar Street, that nothing's been resolved. I thank you for the time and the effort that you've put into this, but please, let's come to a decision here what we're going to do, and I think it's either going to be either do something or don't do something, and I think that's what Mr. Donahue was saying. I can feel his frustration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Any other members of the public? All right, I don't see any hands up and no one in the room. Did anyone receive any email correspondence?
No.
I did not.
Okay, we will continue on to remarks by counselors on public participation. Anyone? Okay, we'll continue on to consideration of old business. And the first item this evening is the proposed fee schedule for the fire department and fire marshal's office. We do have Chief Trommer and Commissioners Whalen and DeMail with us this evening in the room. I know our fire marshal, DJ Zordon, is online with us as well. Counselors, last meeting, we did receive an initial presentation. We had posed some questions. Chief, do you guys want to come up and start your, I think you're listed first in our packet. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay, keep me honest, guys.
Fee schedule.
Yeah, fire marshal's office, yeah.
All right. Do you guys want to address anything to start in terms of like questions that we had last time, or do you want us to start? How do you want to proceed?
However you want to do it. Some of the questions that were brought up on the last meeting was how we came up with the fee schedule. There was one counselor was concerned that we were a little bit too low, but the more we looked into it, those fees are fixed by the insurance company. So if that fee is billed, then that fee is paid. It's just like your medical insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, where the doctor may charge 1,000 and Blue Cross may get the 250 or 400 for the procedure. So that's how that works. So
Okay.
it's a set adjusted amount by the insurance company.
And just so you see, I think James included in your packages.
Yeah.
If you notice on some of them, it'll actually say right in it, fixed by insurance, fixed by
A couple of
insurance.
these,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's where those numbers came up with.
Okay.
So just so you had documentation of.
Thanks.
I know one of the other concerns was the idea of if we bill the insurance company, if they don't pay, or if the person is not insured or something like that, would we be billing residents? That was a big
That
concern
was one
last
of my
time. And
concerns, yeah.
I was looking through the information provided. I noticed Rocky Hill didn't really address it, but the town of Holden, there is a caveat under theirs that says in the event the responsible party has no insurance, the town of Holden may, but shall not be required to bill the responsible party. So what are you guys thinking?
So our opinion is that it's up to the town council whether you know, we don't want to, this isn't it's not any means by, it's going to solve all of our financial issues, just to bring some monies in to help us with some equipment, but we don't believe that the town should be billing.
Everybody's getting going on Cedar Street.
So the town of Rocky Hill, the way they do it is they bill the insurance company. If someone's uninsured, that resident would get the bill. But if they don't pay it, it is actually up to the town whether they want to take the legal right to go after that resident. So again, that's where it comes versus insured versus uninsured.
I guess my concern, and I come from a medical billing field, so I was always driven in my head that the fee is the fee, whether it's self-pay or insurance. I would think at some point the insurance company is going to say, wait a minute, you charged me $1,000, but you charged Jimmy Jones $1,000. He didn't pay his, but I have to pay mine, and I'm gonna not pay it, and I'm gonna sue you. So I think we should probably get a legal opinion. We can do that because I'm afraid we leave ourselves open, especially if we're billing, you know, $1,000 to 6 different carriers, they're not gonna catch on. But if we're billing $1,000 and it happens to hit the same carrier, let's say it's Geico or Travelers, they're gonna say, wait a minute, why am I paying $6,000 when you aren't billing everybody the same? So I'm just concerned about that, and maybe it's not an issue, but from a medical billing perspective, that would have happened, and we would have been in some serious legal problems.
And we should get the town attorney.
I think we should. Yeah.
You know, once we introduce this to see what's the best case for that to go forward.
Just to clarify, Mayor? Yeah.
Yes.
I thought, Councilor Mankey, I thought your question, well, I get that, but I thought your other question you raised, was, I believe your point, is if a person is in a crash, let's say, and maybe I'm wrong on this, and you have to do a technical rescue,
Correct.
Extraction,
Yep.
would a bill go to that individual who just went through that crash? Would we be charging them for that?
Or would definitely go to their insurance company. Yes, that's correct.
That individual would get a bill, some residual or some portion of that, or no? In other words, let's say it goes to their insurance, but insurance either doesn't pay, or there's a copay or something, or a deductible. Would then it potentially go to that individual, to their home?
Well, I would think it would have to if the insurance company doesn't pay it. If the town decides that it's gonna go to the resident, that's how that would play out. So I think that's where the legal opinion.
Right, those
Right,
are
that's
concerns. Do we want to?
Just so that we don't get caught in a.
Right, because I'm just thinking, I know that certainly out west, if an individual, or even in parts of the Adirondacks, if you're climbing and you have gotten stuck or injured, I think it's common practice in Colorado up in the DAC.
They
or
get the bill.
White Mountains, that you get a bill from that
You
rescue.
get billed,
ship,
and
it could be thousands.
it's not small
But
bill.
you chose to.
You chose to hike,
climb,
you chose to get
right.
lost.
So if I'm an idiot, go up in a storm and get stuck and they rescue me for $5,000 with a helicopter, that's one thing. But if, God forbid, somebody's going down Cedar Street, right, and gets in a crash, are we gonna then bill them for your fine services? It just, I don't know.
Yeah, that's my main concern is, and then, so my insurance doesn't pay it. So let's say my house catches on fire and so now you show up and it's okay, it'll be $500, Mr. Mankey, we'll put your house out. Put fire out. I know you don't do that. You do the fire, then you're right. My insurance doesn't cover it because whatever, it's negligence. I screwed it up and I lit the house on fire and insurance doesn't pay it.
And honestly, we don't even know at the time of the incident, whether it be an accident,
Right.
a house fire, car fire, if
We
they're
even have
insured or not
insured or not.
insured.
Right, exactly.
So this
You'd
is
have-
all after the fact.
You'd have no
So
clue.
we have no, we're not gonna know what is until we submit it,
Right.
whether the person's insured or not.
So how would you know?
But what we would do
The
is,
company would,
yeah, we would give all the information to the third party.
Okay, and
Third
they would-
party would actually do the investigation of whether they're insured or not insured, and then it would go from there.
The other thing is I'm thinking of is, my house catches on fire for whatever reason, and maybe it's my fault. I'm cooking out in the backyard and I catch the house on fire. And then you send me a bill. I'm saying, well, that's why I'm paying my taxes for to have a fire department that'll put out the fire. And
right.
And I don't want to get in this where everybody now hates the fire department because they're billing for the house, my house not burning. And it's also probably any of these charges. These are the probably some of the worst times in these people's lives.
Right.
If I
But these are
have
all
to get
in-
excavated from a car, it's a pretty bad thing.
all these fees are industry standard fees that the insurance companies have already built into their policies. So,
I guess my question too would be then, if I have a $500 deductible or something, does that, then the
no,
resident has to pay that first, or is this an automatic, the insurance pays this? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't want the resident to have to come out, if the bill's $1,000, they gotta pay a $500 deductible or whatever their
Well,
deductible
but
is.
more than likely, if you have a small light duty rescue, you have more than $500 worth of damage to your car.
Right,
So, it's just be part of that, making
Right.
that deductible and you get charged with it.
true.
well, if we're taking a
You
hearse
get
through your
charged
car,
anyway.
it's most likely
Yeah.
totaled then.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So you're
You just
saying-
start unlocking the door and letting me out. That's
So maybe the point where you're saying that it would then, they'd be paying that deductible anyway, and on top of that, they get the excellent service, life-saving services of our fire department. So it's not like they just get billed for the technical.
Right,
They have so many
Right.
costs now.
Right.
Right, yeah. I see.
Yeah, even a tow truck, I mean, everybody's gonna charge their fees to the
Right.
insurance companies, and then they just, obviously, the insurance companies cut the checks to the different agencies.
Right.
But I assume if a towing company bills your insurance and they don't pay, the towing company bills the patient, bills the
Yes, they do.
Resident.
the customer
Resident.
resident.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this list and I see there's like 2 or 3 that says fixed by insurance industry, but the rest of them don't say that. I don't see a blanket statement that says this is all.
Yeah, these were just some of them that were fixed by the industry. The other ones were national averages.
Okay.
That they came up with. So this company is the third-party company that Rocky Hill uses, which is what they call Certified Ambulance Group. That's the third-party group that they use to do their billing services for Rocky Hill. That's where these numbers came from.
And Rock Hill is doing this pretty successfully.
So Rocky Hill did it on a trial basis for a 3-month period. In that 3-month period, they made about $10,000. But looking at Rocky Hill, they do a lot of accidents up on 91. So they do a lot of stuff up there. So, they do have a lot of highways. So that's where a lot of their fees come into play.
Mhm.
So, but they did a trial, like I said, for 3 months. They're now implementing it full-time now, and going forward. They had no complaints from the residents. They actually thought it was a good thing. They called it a cost recovery. Fee.
It's how you word it.
It's how you word it. That's how they worded it over there.
I mean,
It's
in other
it's an
words,
operational cost recovery, they called it.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
but that's-
Deputy Mayor Bedrejko had her hand up for a while.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
This third party, company now, is this gonna be like just a new charge or that you're gonna have to contract with?
So
So what they do is when they bill the insurance companies, they take a percentage of the money that they take in. So really, we're not paying them. They take it out of the insurance money that they take in.
Okay, but we'll have a contract with them. You'll have a
Oh,
contract.
absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
And we're actually not 100% sold on this group. We're gonna vet out all the different groups that are out there. There's a couple of them out there, and we'll find out what's the best for the town.
Okay, but there won't be, or, well, you'll find out if there's gonna charge us a fee. I mean, I'm sure, I mean, I
There
think
won't
that this
be
is a
any
great,
fee.
there won't be any fee to, okay.
No.
They'll just take a percentage of what they receive.
And then,
And what they usually do is they'll only take a percentage of monies they collect. So if they don't collect any monies, they don't bill out.
the amount billed, it's the amount collected.
Correct.
and you said that these fees, for the most part, are already built into the insurance, fees are already. So it won't be perceived to an insurance company as being more expensive to Newington now to do business in Newington. So these potential increased fees won't be passed on to the consumers.
But that I can't tell you 100% what the insurance companies are gonna. I mean, eventually, I think most departments are starting to go this way now. A lot of surrounding towns are doing this to the insurance industry. So, I mean, Rocky Hill's doing it. I know Cromwell's doing it. Obviously, we're jumping on board now, and there's other towns around. I believe some down in New Haven area are
Bridgeport's
doing
been
it.
doing it for quite a few years. New Haven's doing it.
So there are a lot of departments trying to recover costs. Prime example is Berlin had a tanker rollover months ago, and they were out there for 3 days straight for a tanker rollover. They used all kinds of foam, environmental cleanup, all the resources that were out there between fire, highway, PD. I mean, there was 3 days worth of recovery costs that they could have got through this and kind of made some money back. I mean, the amount of diesel nowadays is ridiculous. And just to recover some of those costs back to the town, it just helps us operate a little bit easier.
Yep.
Counselor Mankey?
Yeah, I think the important part is we're just recovering costs. We aren't making any money off this. We're just recovering, because when we go to an accident scene, we use equipment, we use supplies, we use manpower, and we're just trying to recover some of those costs.
100%.
My question about the billing company, this will go through an RFP, I believe, through the town, I would assume.
So, yeah.
Okay, and so the Jan
So
or
obviously,
whoever.
we could have all those groups come in here and you guys can interview them if you want at that time, if that's.
I assume a committee will look at it, we'll look at the RFPs and decide which is the best.
That's what we planned on doing that after this was, if it was approved, to put on board.
Yeah.
Mr. Chapman, do you have any input on that with the RFP process? Would you be working with the town manager for that?
Yes.
Yeah, we would.
Absolutely.
We would go for RFPs and, do an evaluation of each company and look at their track records. And then bring back to the council the final selection and have those individuals make a presentation to the council for your approval. So yeah, we do it just like a regular RFP, but in this case, because of the types of services that are provided, we would bring it to the council for your support before we implement it.
Okay.
I just in my career have hired a lot of collection agencies, and I think it's best to have an agency that just remits back to you they take the fee right off the top and then just remit back the rest.
Right.
Correct.
Rather than sending a bill in and having the bill being paid, and that's just, it's cleaner, I think, that way.
Counselor
Let me
Donahue?
just add that if I may, the revenues that would be generated would come into the general fund, and then you as a council would look at what the revenue stream is looking like, and then you can make any adjustments you want on an annual basis to the fire department budget that will help them achieve what they're seeking to achieve.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Donahue?
That was my question.
Okay. Do you have knowledge, is Rocky Hill billing the resident if insurance doesn't pay, do you know?
Yes,
Or
they are.
Cromwell or?
Yes, there.
Okay.
Rocky Hill definitely is. Again, they haven't went after anybody that was
Yeah,
not insured. But they said they really haven't run into that as of think they had one.
Yeah.
But again, it wasn't something that town was doing to just go after. But again, I think that's something we should get a legal opinion on, just to be on the safe side.
I mean, yeah, I would be concerned that if the insurance companies ever got together and said, wait a minute, why are we paying these
absolutely.
fees and you're not charging everybody else?
The other thing I just had a concern on is, you said that if somebody doesn't pay, the town council now has to make the decision as to whether we're gonna go after them.
Because they can't just say you
Town council, we're gonna spend money, right? So now we get to be the bad guys.
So in the ordinance, you'd have to word it however if you want to.
Well, it would be like any other fee that you have for the town of Newington. I mean, do you go after, is there a clause for every single one of your ordinances of fees? I'm not 100% sure. Or is it an overall clause?
I'd have to look at that, right. So we do have a motion in the packet, but I'm wondering if we need to put this off till next Tuesday. We have a meeting next Tuesday. It's not our normal 2 week because this was delayed already. But just to make sure that we check with the town attorney to make sure we're doing the right thing before we pass this. I don't want to pass it and then have us in hot water over having done something wrong. So given the fact that we didn't do that yet, perhaps I can refer this to the town attorney. And then we could.
James, you can take care of that through
I
Mr.
think,
Ancona.
Now, again, I don't know if the fire marshal's fees are similar or if.
Yeah,
they
we're
have
gonna move on.
issues, so-
DJ's a separate, resolution, so to speak. He's on so we'll look at his next, but.
and I think probably they should be two separate resolutions,
Oh, that's
just to
fine,
be,
because ours is
just to be
insurance.
cleaner. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I think it's just to make it makes it cleaner, I think, having two separate resolutions.
Yeah, his is second. in the packet.
And I think this is a good idea. I think it does recover some costs. I'm fully support of this. It's just no different than if an ambulance picks me up at my house, takes me to Hartford Hospital.
Correct.
You don't expect them to do that for nothing. Someone's got to pay for that. If my insurance doesn't pay it, I get a bill.
Yeah, that's true.
I agree.
And if I choose not to pay the bill, then you do, then what the collection agency does, whatever they do to collect it or not collect it, but that's their call.
Commissioner DeMayo, did you have something to add? Absolutely.
I just wanted to let you know that the third party that the fire department wants to use, certified ambulance group, is the same group that takes care of the billing for. As when I was the president of the board of directors, that's who we use. I believe they're still using them, and they've not had any issues in terms of talking about medical billing. There should be no difference with the fire department as with medical billing. When you get a bill, if it goes to your insurance company, they pay a portion. We have to, we get, you get submitted a bill through CAG. They will contact the patient or the insurance company, and that's how that process works. So I don't see that this is going to be a major issue between what an ambulance company charges, whether it's commercial or volunteer, as opposed with the volunteer fire department. This is
Same idea.
the way of the future.
Yeah, it's different because it's medical and there's more requirements for medical than this for this, I'm assuming, but I'm just afraid that at one point, if the insurance companies get together and say, wait a minute, why, and not just for us, but if this becomes more widespread across the country, they're gonna say, wait a minute, why are you charging us one fee and not charging the consumer one fee or trying to collect it from them? Why are we paying that? And
Well, they would get a bill, wouldn't
they would get a bill, but if we don't try to collect it, we just give them a bill and just wave it and say, hey, we're just giving you a bill, but don't worry about it, don't pay it.
But how we manage the bills is our business, I think. But the attorney can weigh in on that.
Yeah, that's what I'm just.
I don't want to make any call on that.
Yeah.
That's the attorney's.
Well, and I don't want to leave the fire department vulnerable by saying, oh, you're just collecting from these guys, but you're collecting from us. And
We can reach out to him and see what he comes up with this week. Absolutely.
I think if we can just get that opinion, it sounds like everybody at the table I'm looking around is.
Yeah, I like
certainly
the
in favor
idea.
of this.
I like that you're recovering the costs.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I do think it should be two separate resolutions.
Yeah, it is. It's separated.
Okay, it's
Yep.
separate, I'm sorry.
Yep. So yeah, be assured that we're all working on it. We just want to make sure we do it right for you so that we don't mess up. So we'll bring it back. Can we add that to the agenda? It didn't go out yet for next Tuesday. Thank you. So we'll make sure that and can we try to put them at the beginning of the
Yeah.
agenda? Because they've been waiting around a lot for us the last couple meetings. All right.
We just don't see their smiling faces.
All right, thank you. Anything else you guys want us to consider? Are we good
The fire truck.
Well, we'll let you do DJs.
on that?
Just so I.
Yeah, we need
Yeah.
to move on to
You can do that,
DJs.
And then we'll talk about the
And
engine.
then, yeah,
Yeah, and
Perfect.
DJs is pretty more cut and dry because you're billing the consumer all the time.
right. All right.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right, we are gonna table that until our next agenda, as mentioned, and we're gonna look now at the second fee structure, which is for the fire marshal's office. I'm sorry, I just lost my place on the agenda here. So the proposed fee schedule for the fire marshal's office, in our packet, there is a separate motion for that. BJ, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Sure can. How you doing tonight?
Good, thanks. You?
Good, thanks. All right, so we have in front of us a list of fees that you are recommending for your department, and counselors, do you have any questions for him on this? Counselor Donahue?
I mean, if it was covered in the last meeting, forgive me, I was
Oh, right.
sleeping in the woods. But this looks like explain to me what the difference is between the first set of fees and this set of fees are.
So the first set of fees for the fire department are operational recovery. So if the fire department goes out and spends hours on an incident, or that they're going to a specific type of incident where they're required to use equipment that costs money or supplies that be replenished, the fire department is going to use that third party to recoup their cost. These fees for my office are operational in nature as well, but these aren't things that we necessarily budget for. So the biggest thing would be like a fire watch, where we have fire department personnel that, in order to keep a building open in the event that there may not be a fire alarm or a sprinkler system because of a malfunction, the fire department will stand watch, and they're paid for that. Same thing with fireworks or special effects. I know that was a comment last time that I can address. But all of these things that we're requested to do, all of these items, we incur a cost as the town, and we're just kind of passing that cost on to the person that needs the service, above and beyond the normal budgeted, the normal operational budget of the fire marshal's office.
Okay, so help me out. I see light duty rescue.
No, this
No,
is.
no,
no,
we're
no.
looking
at the wrong
list.
Keep flipping.
Next one.
Flip to the back of the next resolution.
Well, that makes perfect sense to me.
We were testing this one.
Okay, I'm like, look at this, 400 and 400. That's why I didn't see the difference. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Sure.
I'm good.
Okay. Let's see, Counselor Menke?
And just DJ, these fees are billed mostly to the individuals. So if I'm requesting a fireworks permit, the individual's paying. We aren't going through the insurance at all. This is just an individual.
Correct. And I know one of your comments last time was, how many fireworks do we do? And typically the park and rec is the best. And I'm not looking to, single out park and rec for extravaganza. So one of the things that we would look to maybe change this from fireworks to pyrotechnics or special effects. And that would encompass, if any business owner wanted to do, typically it would be a bar, any sort of special effects for a performance. It could encompass the high school, if we incur any cost, if they want to do any sort of theater production. And I mean, just to give an example, for extravaganza, because it's the most real, my office is required to be there for 12, 13 hours. And obviously our staff is paid, so that's an operational cost that isn't necessarily factored into the budgeting process. So same thing, if we were required to be at a business, a bar, at the high school, wherever these, special effects are taking place, that should be on the applicant of the permit to cover those costs. And,
Costs, right.
and we're not
Makes
looking
sense.
we're not looking for the full cost at this point. We're just offsetting.
So DJ, in terms of what's before us tonight, though, the motion before us tonight and the attached schedule just has the fireworks permit. Do we need to look at changing that before we pass it to include the pyrotechnic piece and just?
You can make the change. You're adopting the fee schedule. If you want to just indicate that item 4 would read as pyrotechnics and special effects.
Special effects, yeah.
That'd be fine.
I'm just concerned because the description is very specific to fireworks. And I don't know that I'm qualified to rewrite that description.
Because it does say the attached document, which is.
It's got the CGS, Connecticut General Statute require the local fire marshal to be on site. It's all related to fireworks. So while I agree with what DJ said, I absolutely agree with you, DJ, about perhaps broadening it, but we would have to revamp the description too to match that, I think. No?
So the Connecticut General Statutes for fireworks does also include special effects.
Okay.
It's all the same statute.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So DJ, would you recommend for number 4, changing the name of it, application for fireworks permit / something, or just leave it as is and it's covered under the general statute?
Just put the general statute number in there. Is that interesting? Go look it up.
My recommendation would be to change it, application for fireworks or special effects.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, we're all just writing stuff down now. All right, Deputy Mayor Pedrejko?
Yeah, I have, I guess a comment question on number 5, open burning permit. First of all, like, in what instance are you talking about a resident doing this?
So from time to time, in my short time here, it's only happened once. But a lot of times residents will come in and ask if they can do a brush burning. They have so much brush to get rid of. Trying to take it to the transfer station or throw it away or chip it up is kind of unrealistic. So they'll ask to do an open burn, which means they build a big pile, and the fire department would typically be required to go out and kind of stand by to ensure that it's safe. So this would just be a permit, 20 permit fee for us to go out, evaluate the safety concern. This wouldn't, everybody's very concerned. This wouldn't be required for a small fire pit in somebody's backyard.
Well, my concern though, I mean, it's inexpensive, quite frankly, $20, but yet potentially, I would think as a town, we would want to discourage open pit burning from an environmental perspective, both for the pollution effects and air quality, as well as, like, for example, now with the drought conditions that we have, I would think that it should be more than $20. I would think it's something we don't want to encourage, and I would actually up the fee.
This would just be for the application to get the actual permit. DEEP does have pretty strict guidelines as to when those permits can be issued, and it does take into account forest fire danger and air quality. But then it would be dependent also on the fire department. We would typically not allow, my office wouldn't allow an open burning to occur without consultation with the fire department. And if they're going to be required to be there, the property owner would have to pay the fire department to be there as well. And that goes towards the fire watch fees or any standby fees that they may incur because of the fire department being there. So it would be pretty, it would be expensive to do this.
It would be what? I'm sorry, you cut out at the end there.
It could be fairly pricey to have the fire department standing by for, several hours with apparatus just to burn some brush.
Okay, so in one way, okay, but it would be something that, I mean, your office is pretty judicial about whether or not to grant it.
Yeah, we would, the biggest thing we would look at is where it is and the amount of material. But again, it would be something that's done in coordination with the fire department. So again, the $20 would just be the actual permit fee.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Donahue?
It's just, that's the $20 is the permit fee, but the person doing the burning would have to pay for apparatus standby?
Potentially, yep.
Okay, well, I'd rather drive to the dump than spend $300 an hour. All right, thank you.
Yeah, you rent the chipper for that, right? Just chip it up.
All right. So folks, we have in our packet the resolution for this. I would ask that whoever reads the resolution just indicates that the Town of Newington schedule of fees and charges as amended in number 4 to add to read application for fireworks or special effects permit. Who would like to go ahead and do that for me?
I can do it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Patrico.
Resolved that the Newington Town Council hereby approves changes to various fees on the Town of Newington's schedule of fees and charges as amended for item 4, application for fireworks / special effects permit in accordance with the Newington Town Code, Chapter 225 fees, and as indicated in the attached document, Fire Marshal fees listing August 2022.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Rada. Any further discussion, counselors? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, DJ.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. We are moving on to the next item this evening, which is the fire department apparatus replacement of engine 2. We are looking this evening to introduce the ordinance and schedule the public hearing. So, just so people will understand who didn't watch last meeting when we did discuss this a little bit, was the department is due for replacing engine 2 out of next year's capital improvement plan. But because of the delays that they brought to our attention in terms of the timeline to receive the truck once it's ordered, right now it's going out
30 months.
about 30 months on average. Typically it's about a year, correct? Yeah. So the fire department brought to our attention and to the town manager's attention the fact that if we waited until next year to get this process going, which was the original plan, that we would be well behind, and that there is some issue with the current truck that we're looking to replace. We want to make sure that we're able to do that in a timely fashion. So this is a way that the council has deemed appropriate to go ahead and move this forward a little bit earlier than was originally anticipated, to make sure that we are keeping safety above all else and making sure that we have a truck that's safe for our department and for our residents in the long run. Councilor Menke, would you like to go ahead?
Certainly. Introduction. I hereby introduce for the town council's consideration the proposed special appropriation ordinance for the purchase of a replacement fire apparatus for engine number 2. Resolved, the Newington Town Council hereby schedules a public hearing on August 23rd, 2022 at 6:45 p.m. to consider the proposed special appropriations ordinance for purchase of a replacement fire apparatus for engine 2.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Rada. Any discussion, folks?
Is this coming out of removing money from next year's budget to this year's budget?
We're not actually,
It's coming out of the general fund. It's
yes.
a special appropriation. This is actually the first time that we've had to do one. This is in excess of the 375, but under the 975. So by ordinance is how you will pass it. The other differences would be if we were over 975, it would be a referendum. If we were under 375, you do it by resolution only.
All right, so we're taking money out of the general fund to do it this year, and then next year, that money that was budgeted will go back into the general fund?
That would be a question for the finance director and the town manager during budget appropriation period of time.
In a sense,
So we
we're just, yeah, in a
It
sense.
would have to come out during budget, though. It would have to happen through the budget process.
Right.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Let me just jump in. There won't be any expenditures made until we are closer to getting a delivery of the truck. So this is only basically to get the order in now because we have been notified that the lead time has been extended up to 2.5 to 3 years. If we don't do this now, we're just delaying the order going in another year. And we're not going to spend any money out of the CIP or anywhere else for the next couple of years until we get very close to taking delivery on the truck. So it's just the speed. They need a purchase order. And this will allow us to issue a purchase order.
Yep.
Not that we're going to spend any money immediately.
But the money has to be
It's gonna
shown
done.
to be there.
That's
I'm,
correct.
I'm just stunned that
have
we
to
start
show
building
that.
a fire engine without a down payment or something.
Just,
What was that?
just also to let you know, this actually locks the price in. So they're already talking about price increases coming in the fall and then so forth next year. And they can't forecast what the price will be in 2 years from now. So this actually locks this price in for us right now at the rate it is today. And it will not increase over the life of the build. If we were to wait, we have no idea what that number is gonna come in at. So I'm just letting you know that that's the reason that we're trying to get this pushed. Because there's talk about now, when you sign a contract, that they're gonna put adjustment rates in there down the road.
Down the road, yeah.
So there may be a 5-10% increase that they can increase, but at this point, if we sign this, there's no clause like that that's gonna be in there. So that's the other reason we're trying to get this.
Because I know
makes
you
sense.
mentioned that last
Yeah.
time. Yep.
There'll be no payment required any earlier than what if you hadn't taken this action at all. It's all about the timing, and the timing has been extended now, so our payments will be extended out accordingly. So you're not going to see any impact on the actual dollars in the accounts for several years.
So it's good for the taxpayer. It's good.
Absolutely, it saves us money, so.
Right.
You could be potentially saving up to 30% because they're stocking a 12 to 13% increase for next January.
Well, and plus we get it before
Plus you're getting it a
3
year
years from
earlier.
now.
than-
Right. Right.
And if you wait until next year.
Makes sense.
makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, so we have the motion, we have the second. Any other discussion, counselors? You all set? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. At least we got 1 out of 2 done for you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll see you again next week. There you go.
All right.
Order to send.
All right.
We'll be here.
We'll
All
get you
right.
up right away.
Thank you all.
Have a good week, guys. Thanks.
You too. All right, next item this evening is refunds, approval of the August 16th, 2022 refunds. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Resolved that property tax refunds in the amount of $3,180.41 are hereby approved in the individual amounts and for those named on the requests for refund of an overpayment of taxes certified by the revenue collector, a list of which is attached to this resolution.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Counselor Donahue. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. All right, next item this evening is minutes of previous meetings. I would entertain a motion to accept the meeting, July 20th, 2022 public hearing minutes, July 20th, 2022 special meeting minutes, July 26th, 2022 public hearing minutes, and July 26th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Menke. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Rada. Any discussion? Counselor Nagel's not here
I'm
tonight
just
to
worried. I
help
was
us
gonna
out.
say, I'm worried about that, Mayor.
Any discussion? Anyone? No?
I was not here for the 26th meeting, so I'll have to just abstain from those.
You don't have to, but it's
Okay.
your choice, certainly.
It was a really good meeting too.
We do have it
Because I
on,
wasn't here.
we do have it on as one motion. Would you prefer that we break it up? so
No,
you can
that's,
abstain,
you know what,
or-
I did read them, so that's.
Okay, all right. All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Just so everybody knows, if they're not paying attention, Counselor Braverman is raising her hand for an aye on the screen, I know.
We see her.
Okay.
We can see her voting in the affirmative, okay. All right, next item is new business, and we have before us this evening for consideration a financial information access MOU between the town and Board of Education. So to give you some background on this, we had talked a couple of years ago now, I believe, about the fact that the Board of Education and the town are using two very different platforms for their financial departments and managing finances. And what came to light was, some of us wanted the Board of Ed to consider moving to the Munis platform so that we would all be on the same platform. I think for some of us, we would still like to see that in the future. But this is an agreement that would at least help alleviate some of the inefficiencies in the two systems right now. And so in looking at this agreement, we were trying to help out. Essentially right now, our finance department has to take information from the Board of Ed as provided and then re-input it into our system. So there's kind of double work happening. And our town side is doing a lot of Board of Ed work and vice versa. There's a lot of inefficiencies in the way business is being conducted right now. So if we wanted to see a report on some financial piece that the Board of Ed expended or did, we would have to get approved through their finance director and wait for the report to be generated and that kind of thing. And vice versa, if they are requesting some information from us, there's time that has to pass and it puts more burden on each of the other departments to do those reports. So the gist of this MOU is to see if we can, through allowing access to read-only access, to be clear, read-only on our side and read-only on the Board of Ed side, if that would help alleviate some of the inefficiencies and make things a little bit easier for both bodies involved. So I had worked with the Board of Education chairman, as well as getting input from our finance director, Janet Murphy, and the town manager to make sure that they were in agreement with the language as it was kind of drafted and gone through a few iterations. And the Board of Ed chair did the same on the Board of Ed side. So you have before you a draft, which we will have to tweak a few things. So you'll see that it is an agreement between the town council, the board. So we would be looking to take action, hopefully at our next meeting, if appropriate. And then the board would take action when they come back into session. They're off for the summer. So the language essentially indicates that the Board of Education agrees to establish a read-only access process to the agreed upon board financial documents. The board's chief financial officer will work with the town finance director to identify the financial documents to be accessed. The Board of Ed will provide access to the town financials, will be provided access to the town financial system. The only caveat I will say is this was written a while ago, or at least drafted. And so the date on here says July 1st. We would have to think about how we want to reword this. I'm hesitant to put a specific date only because we don't know when the board will take action. So perhaps we need to change the language to read something like, once both bodies have acted in the affirmative on the agreement, that it would go into effect. And we can certainly modify that. The town attorney did review it. He had no problem with it. What else do you guys need to know? Let's see. The agreement, the Board of Ed asked that it be for just one fiscal year, and then we would revisit it at the end of the fiscal year to see if it's still, if it's working and if it's viable and if it makes sense to continue it. So there is a expiration, so to speak, of the one fiscal year. I guess that's all I have to offer right now. Deputy Mayor Bedrejko?
Yes, I just have a question. It's a little loose. It says, whereas the town would like to read only access to identified areas of the board's financials. The board's chief financial officer will work with the town finance director to identify the financial documents to be accessed. I'm, very hopeful that this will be, an open cooperative effort, but what if there should be a disagreement between, let's say, one CFO wants documents and the other CFO will not release it? If there's any kind of disagreement, who will the final arbitrator be?
I think ultimately they would both have to agree. If one doesn't agree, then it doesn't happen, is the way I would read it. And but I will tell you that in our discussions, Janet's not on the call, is she? No. And we can have her on next time to talk a little more about it in terms of her perspective on it. I had talked to her about it and she said, well, it should be all accounts. She wants the Board of Ed to have access, read-only access to everything.
I guess
Here you go,
I would
open
just
slate.
like a process. It doesn't have to be in the MOU, but just in case that there's, let's say, a little bit of disagreement, who would be the final arbitrator? Would it be the superintendent of schools and the town manager? Would it be raised to us and the Board of Ed? I mean, just
Okay.
wonder if we
Yeah.
could
I would
pass
think-
that through Janet.
I would think it'd have to be raised to us in the Board of Ed. I would assume, to our level, I would assume to mediate the difference.
Ma'am?
If there is,
Yes.
I mean, I don't anticipate one, but.
I would say, well, I don't necessarily disagree, Councilman Draco. I think that because in my limited tenure here, my understanding of the history of our relationship with the Board of Ed as a town side has been one of not a lot of trust and sometimes conflict, that rather than anticipate sort of a litigious interaction based on potentially anticipated lack of cooperation, I would like to leave it a little bit looser and in the spirit of this, move forward this year, maybe, and into next to start with where we do have common ground. And then hopefully if this can build trust and we can increase the specificity and maybe down the road, further cooperation.
I'm not saying that, like I said, I have a high hopes that this will be fine and there's not going to be an issue, but should there be one, I really think you need to be proactive and you have to think because of human nature, because of history, because of possibly, I mean, there may be confidential items that we don't know about, that I don't know about, that we shouldn't be as transparent as we think there are. Just in case there's an issue, who to bring it to. I'd rather have that identified in advance rather than when there is an issue and then stall further progress.
I would feel it would be brought to both sides, the Board of Ed and Town Council. So that we would all be apprised of what the issue might be.
And also do we-
Processing. I guess I'm more of a mindset that we're putting our chief financial officers on both sides in charge of making this work. And if for some reason we sign this MOU and we say that this is what we want, if they find that it's not really happening, they'd have to come back to us. They'd have to say, you guys executed this
Yeah,
MOU, we're not able to,
You can't do this.
we're not able to execute it on our end, so back to the drawing board. So I think ultimately that's what would happen. We're expecting them to do something, and if it doesn't happen, they would have to come back to our body and the respective body on their side. It just took me a minute to process what that means, but that's my take on it, I guess.
I'm just wondering though, I'm thinking about what Councilor Draco said. Should there be some language to that effect written into the MOU? Not to relay any notion of distrust or foreboding, but this would actually maybe be beneficial for both sides.
I guess I would be hesitant. It would be weird to say, we're gonna enter into a contract. This is what we're expecting, but should it not happen?
Well, no,
I don't know, it's a little-
I wouldn't say not happen, but I'm thinking more, if they're, I'm trying to think of the wording. If a question should arise, some kind of flexible language that, that issue will be brought to both bodies for resolution.
You had your hand up over there.
One of the pieces you guys are sort of discussing is already contained within the draft, which is the fourth paragraph where you're authorizing the town manager and the superintendent to implement. So I think if you're having an issue between your finance director and the board side, it goes through both of them before you have to get to the council side of it. You hope they're gonna remedy that situation first.
And we would be, I mean, I would imagine that Superintendent Brummett would inform the Board of Ed.
Correct, and that would come through as a manager.
Town manager Chapman.
Right.
Yeah.
So we would be the last resort. So I think, I agree. I think for this point, we can leave it the way it is and see, you know, I always like to hope for the best. And I think this is a great start in that mutual trust. Because I don't, Council Page says, there hasn't been mutual trust with the board and the councils. Since before I even got on the council, there hasn't ever been mutual
This might
trust.
be a good step forward.
And this is for me, this is a huge step forward. And I would think that, ultimately, a disagreement that doesn't make this work would have to come back to both respective bodies anyway, by the town manager bringing it back to us, and the superintendent would bring it back to the Board of Ed and say, this isn't working for these reasons.
Well, and I will draw your attention, that first paragraph says, whereas the Newington Board of Education and the Newington Town Council want to ensure financial transparency between the board and the council. And that really is the goal of this document.
Right.
So one would hope that the read-only access would be pretty open in order to meet that expectation. But I understand what your concern is, but I think that's a very good point that James made, that paragraph that says that it's really acting through the superintendent and the town manager. Mr. Chapman, you would bring forward back to us if there was any issue with this, correct?
Yes.
Are you okay with that?
No, fine, as long as, again, as long as there's a process, should there be a stumbling block, I'd rather have it, rather than linger and just say, okay, let's just halt and bring it to resolution.
And I believe that Janet has already spoken to Lou upstairs a little bit about this and kind of identifying accounts. They're already
starting to
working
work
on
on
a
it.
collaboration of making it so that it can be executed when it's signed and done. So I believe that there's already some good forward motion in that regard. So we're not looking to take, this is new business, so we'll look to move that to our next agenda. And I will work, I'll talk to Dr. Fletcher from the Board of Ed on changing that date, because it says no later than July 1st, and I think we need to change that.
You got two dates,
Yeah.
item 1 and item 3.
Yeah. So for both of those, items 1 and item 3, or just remove that and put it at the end of like a number 5 that says that it will be executed upon affirmative action taken by both bodies, something to that effect. So I will look to make that change prior to our next meeting so that we can go ahead and move forward on this.
Just one question, maybe this is for James, that if we don't specify a date within the body, that would it be appropriate or would it be necessary to put the date of the signatories?
That'll be added to the document anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else for
Yeah, we
consideration?
could just make it say no later than 30 days from the date of signature.
Well, that may be a time constraint in setting up the systems and the interconnectivity. We can discuss that.
Can we should get information, we
We'll
should
get
check
some
with Lou and
information
with
from-
Janet
Yeah, Janet and Lou first.
and get an agreed upon before we take action, yeah. Yep. All right, so we'll report back to you guys next time.
It's good.
Thank you. All right, that concludes new business. We're on to written and oral communications from the town manager. Mr. Chapman?
Thank you. I have a couple of things. Just an update on the Maple Hill Avenue and Robbins Avenue road improvements. You will start seeing work being done on Maple Hill Avenue in the next couple of days or weeks. The plan is that they're going to try to accomplish all the work for Maple Hill Avenue before the winter. So hopefully that part of the project will be completely done, or 99% done, we'll say, before any snow flies. Then next spring, if we do have snow, they're going to continue working. If the weather is favorable, they'll continue working right on to Robbins Avenue and work on that throughout the winter. But assuming that we do have a regular winter, then the Robbins Avenue piece will be done in the spring and into the summer. So Maple Hill Avenue should be all done pretty much by winter. And then Robbins will be done next spring and summer. Citizen survey, as we've been talking, we're looking at doing a citizen survey, which will be a proposal that comes to the council in the next month or two. We're meeting with the staff right now with a consulting company to determine what the staff would like to see contained within a survey that would go out to citizens. And then you as a council will have an opportunity as well to have input into the questions that will be asked. And this should help in a lot of respects on some of the major decisions that you're going to be faced with, as well as helping with the next year's budget preparation once we know better what our citizens really want to be doing in town. There hasn't been a citizen survey done in about 22 years now. So this is long overdue. So I think it'll be very beneficial to get that input officially from our citizens. So there'll be a percent of the citizens' households that will be invited to participate in this. Town hall hours, we're doing this pilot program. It seems to be working extremely well. We'd like to extend it to the end of December now, keeping with the same hours where Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday will remain at 8:30 to 4:30, Tuesdays 8:30 to 6 p.m., and Fridays 8:30 to noon. I think everybody's getting adjusted to that, and I haven't received any complaints in my office about it. So I think that I'd like to run it until the end of December and then make a final decision on how we want to structure our work schedules in the upcoming year. So unless the council has some objection, we'll proceed with that extension of the pilot program. And that's it.
Okay, great. Any questions, counselors?
Just if I may, Mr. Chapman, can you just say a couple words about what is actually going to happen? I know this has been detailed before, so I'm not asking for a big presentation. Just what's going to happen on Maple Hill and Robbins. It's pretty exciting, I think, right?
Yeah, the construction, or we'll say milling and paving, basically the width of the roads will remain the same. The curb lines will remain the same, but there'll be improvements made to the curbing, made to the pavement. There'll be milling done. There'll be a reconfiguration of the laneage, painting that's done. Drainage will be improved. There'll be some sidewalk improvements along both roads. And it'll really be blending in very well with what's going to be finished up on Willard Avenue. So we're going to have that whole quadrant done, which will benefit the town greatly. So it shouldn't be too much of an inconvenience. We'll have some detours at times, but overall it should run fairly smoothly. But when we're done, you'll have two new roadways that are at the same width but reconfigured. There'll be some widening done over at the Main Street Robbins Avenue intersection that will make it more accommodating for people riding the buses, because right now it's kind of a crazy situation that occurs, but that'll be corrected. And so overall, it's a state project. It's funded by the state, and we're looking forward to it, and it should start up. We just met today with the contractors, and it'll be starting up within the next few days or weeks, and there'll be signage put up and milling being done. And again, Robbins Avenue will be the second phase, we'll say, where Maple Hill from Robbins to New Britain Avenue will be the first phase.
Thank you. And then one last question. Can we get that unaffiliated resident appointed to the ethics committee so we can move forward with the establishment or reestablishment of the ethics committee?
I don't have a problem with that. If you guys, yeah, I mean, do I make the appointment, James?
Yes, you do.
He's reached out to you a few times, yeah.
And we have the name and everything?
Yeah, we have an email. Now we can discuss it in the morning.
Okay, sure. Yep.
All right, thank you, sir.
Keith, the Robbins Ave piece, they're going to be moving it from 2 lanes down to 1 on each side, right? And then adding a bike path, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll be all through paint and striping. It won't be narrowing the road, from the curb to curb. It'll just be a reuse of the laneage along there. So
Perfect.
there'll be 1 lane in both directions, and then a bike lane, which we don't currently have. So that'll be a real improvement.
In the right direction. All right. Thank you.
Same item, the town engineer will be holding a public informational meeting on August 25th on that project as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Excellent. Where's that? Is it here?
That'll be in the council chambers, 7 o'clock.
Perfect.
We'll send that into your folders. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Next item this evening is council liaison and committee reports. Anyone?
You can report on insurance.
I'm gonna report the standing insurance committee, or the the employee insurance benefits and pensions committee met yesterday. And we'll probably, like anything else, our pension, has taken a hit with our individual investments have, but we're still in good shape. There's no action coming out of that committee that this council has to take a notice of.
Okay.
And we're just getting final reports on the end of the year claims for the health insurance.
Okay. All right, next item is public participation. Any member of the public may come forward. If you're in the room, you're welcome to come forward to the microphone. And if you're online, raising your hand in the Zoom window. We do ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and if you would state your name and address for the record. Ms. Lyons. Welcome back.
Hi, Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. I just wanted to make a comment about the pilot program with the town hall. I'm glad that it was mentioned tonight. There was talk on Facebook by someone who indicated that the employees of the town hall and the town manager had said that the pilot program was going to end. I'm glad to hear that you're extending it, and I'm glad to hear that you're setting the record straight and not to listen to what's said on Facebook. But I'd also wonder where the hours are posted other than on the door of the town hall as you walk in and on the website. Has it been posted in the Rare Reminder or Town Crier or anything like that? I know my sister-in-law went to pay her taxes on a Friday afternoon and saw the notice about the pilot program, but never really read what it said. She thought it was something to do with Parks and Recreation and was surprised when she walked in that the offices were closed. If it's going to continue, if it's not been publicized in other places other than the website and being spoken about at town council meetings and a notice on the door, taxes will be coming due again, so maybe we can somehow get the word out to the general public about the change in the hours. I'm glad to hear that there's going to be an informational session on the streetscape program. It seems we have a lot of projects going on in town or planned in town. I know that Garfield Street's been on the planning block since before the town hall was even constructed. And I know there's a lot of people on Facebook asking, and they ask and people guess as to what's happening. It would be nice to hear it straight from the town engineer. So I'm glad that he's having that informational session, and I hope people will attend it. And I hope that it's advertised so that people are aware that this is happening, because I know there was talk about the Maple Hill project, about a realignment of a street there too. I don't know what the final plans are, but once again, thank you for bringing us up to date on the project, Mr. Chapman, and everyone take care, stay well. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. Take care. All right, I don't see any other hands up. Come right up. If you would just let us know your name and address, and then you have 3 minutes.
My name is Brian Rainier from 11 Webster Court.
Welcome.
Thank you. I don't know about the appropriateness and the timing of me being before you all in this microphone. It's a privilege to be here and to hear you folks speak and where you got cradle the concerns of the community. So, but kind of a tenuous segue would be, my dad was, I beg your pardon, my granddad was a fireman, and he was with Engine 1 up in Waterbury, and he died at a brush fire. He was an engine, he was the driver of the hook and ladder up there. I couldn't become one in his footsteps. I tried, but I had an injured hand and I couldn't do the pull-ups, and so I couldn't make it on that attempt. The fire and the police are dear to my heart. The police through a number of occasions, but also because of the CIT training. I was out in Tennessee when they formed that, and with Louise Pyers, you may be familiar with, who was the the spark plug, the heart and soul of CIT in Connecticut, out of Nami, Connecticut. I was just wondering, to get to the gist of it, as I said in the beginning, the appropriateness of my being here, I guess primarily just to introduce myself, and hopefully to keep it under 3 minutes, to ask primarily the appropriateness, again, of discussing things germane to our country in terms of red and blue, and the outcomes of just all that's happening in our country. So I don't know if you carve out time in your agendas for such discussions, primarily the input of this town council, if at all, to weigh in on national concerns as a logical extension of what you might do here in Newington. So that's about all. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think you do a wonderful job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, remarks by counselors? Deputy Mayor Bedrejko.
Okay, actually, this is quite, I think, germane to today's meeting. In today's Hartford Current, there was an announcement, and it was titled 16 million grant will finish the Farmington Trail. And a federal grant of $16 million is going to help finance the completion of the Farmington Heritage Trail in Plainville, and also it's part of a bigger $30 million project that's going to connect that trail from the Plainville to New Britain, to the New Britain bus station, this Connecticut Fast Track. And it's expected to, construction expected to begin this year. But what's cool about that is that it doesn't mention Newington, but by connecting the Farmington Heritage Trail to downtown New Britain, that's going to allow Newington cyclists to access the Farmington Heritage Trail,
Right,
which
that's
is,
true.
I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely
That's a
thrilled.
great trail too.
Because it's going to be able to come, and then it's also going to extend the Heritage Trail from New Britain to Newington Junction. And what that's going to mean is that we're going to be part of a larger network. And I'm excited because now with Newington Junction, with the whole talk about the historic loop and developing that, this could be actually a destination place for cyclists who start out in Farmington, Avon, Plainville, New Britain, and eventually, they'll terminate in Newington, although at some point I hope that Newington Junction extends into Hartford. But I just thought it was really, it's exciting for a few cyclists in Newington to have a safe place to cycle and to be part of a larger, quite frankly, Greenway system. So just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
Thank you. Councilor Page?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I saw that, Councilor Bedrejko, and was excited about that as well. And I didn't really address this when the gentlemen were here, Mr. Morehouse and others from the mobility project. But when they talked about the Greenway, it made me think of recreational paths that are exist from New England out to out west. And certainly we have the rails to trails, which you're referencing. And I think that if we can, I can't wait to get more details about the Greenway proposal through our town. That looks like it's connected as a system throughout the rest of Greater Hartford, because that not only does everything you just said and that article references, but it also encourages some commercial activity around and along those areas. And I believe if you look at the literature, it increases property values significantly because of the quality of life issues that exist with that. So agreed, and it's exciting stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just to address our speaker that came up a few minutes ago, our council agenda is set based on our council rules. So there's really no, we follow Robert's rules. There's no back and forth discussion that we have at a structured council meeting. And we don't usually bring politics into this table because I think we all view our role here as elected to serve Newington. So we just talk about Newington and what we can do for Newington. But I would urge you, if you have questions for any of us, to reach out to us individually. And we would certainly be able to talk with you directly about that. We just don't choose to do that as part of our council business. All right, so any other remarks by councilors? All right, on to informational items. We have in our packet this evening, the Human Services newsletter, which everybody can take a look at and read. It's available for anyone that would like it. Is it up on the website as well?
I think we got an email too. Came into our email, I believe.
Because this is a lot of good information for the public too. We want to make sure everybody's getting a chance to take a look at it. All right. Any questions or comments on that?
And of course, it is attached to our packet as well. right,
Yeah.
Which they can download from.
Yep. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Thank you. All right. Next is a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Motion made by Council Mackey, seconded by Council Donahue. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously and we stand adjourned at 9:23 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
It's control.
All right.
Hey, I'm not out yet.
Password.
We're still live, sorry. You can turn your mic off if you want by pushing the button to red.